Welcome back to Practical Prophecy. We're not going to have a fancy introduction on this one either, just like the last episode. We're going to get right into it. Now, I understand that these last couple of episodes have been a bit of a history lesson, and we're going to go through a history lesson today too. But now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Now we're going to start to understand that a lot of what's happening in our society and our culture was contrived. It was created. It was done on purpose. And the history lesson is because if you don't know your history, you are destined to repeat it. So we need to see this history lesson to show, when we get to the manifestations later, that this was done in the past. This isn't anything new. The media has been in control of engineering a society and a culture for a purpose and a reason. They're leading us to a destination. There is a purpose in it all. So this may be a bit of a history lesson, but pay attention because you'll see what they've done in the past is what they're doing today. This whole series is based around Revelation 13:7, which states that the beast is given the authority to conquer the saints, and it's all done through the mind. We're going to take a look at the fourth step, which was the beginning of social engineering. Let's get into it. We learned in the previous episodes that in 1934, the Communications Act consolidated regulations over all forms of communication. The Office of War Information created the propaganda machine in Step 2. Step 3, the Voice of America, used news outlets, radio, movies, television, newspapers, and advertising agencies to promote government ideals. Then we learned that when NBC sued the FCC, that Supreme Court ruling began the transfer of authority from elected representatives to unelected bureaucracies. It also began to regulate all the associations and affiliations of information outlets. And then we learned about the Venona Project, which showed the globalist and communist influences in the State Department. That brings us to the fourth step in creating a fourth branch of government. In this fourth step, we will see that the propaganda went beyond the United States. It extended now into all of Latin America, the entire Western Hemisphere. To create this fourth branch of government, they began social engineering. Social engineering is the use of centralized planning in an attempt to manage social change and regulate the future development and behavior of a society. In episode 1 of this series, The War on the Saints, we learned that this war is waged in the battlefield of the mind, that saints are conquered in their minds by the beast. In episode 2, we learned the first weapon of the beast is our education system. We learned in that episode that we have given our education system over to the United Nations. The United Nations Education System, UNESCO, stands for the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization. This is because the United Nations uses education to create a culture. We learn this from the UNESCO documents themselves. Here's a quick reminder of what we saw in episode 2. Here is UNESCO.org, the group that is now in charge of our educational system, in consultation with member states, UN agencies, IGOs, NGOs, universities, and partner networks, usher in a change in attitudes, behaviors, and values to bring about change in values, attitudes, and lifestyles. On July 31st, 1941, by Executive Order 8840, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the OCIAA, which is the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs. He put at the head of this department Nelson Rockefeller. Nelson Rockefeller is the grandson of John D. Rockefeller, who at his peak had a net worth of $419 billion. Both CNN and the New York Times created a list of the 10 wealthiest Americans to have ever lived. and both of those outlets listed John D. Rockefeller as the #1 wealthiest person in the United States to have ever lived. To put this into perspective, at the end of 2019, both outlets also did a list of the current 10 wealthiest people in the world. #1 on that list at the end of 2019 was Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, worth $115 billion. The second wealthiest person on the planet was Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, also at $115 billion. Third was a family from France, but #4 was Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, worth $108 billion. Their total combined is $338 billion. This means that 3 of the 4 wealthiest people on this planet had a total worth at the end of 2019 of $338 billion. John D. Rockefeller, at his peak, had a net worth of $419 billion. That's more than all 3 of the others put together. And Nelson Rockefeller, his grandson, is now the head of the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs. Now, I'm not saying that wealth is evil. The Bible clearly teaches that money is not evil. However, the love of money and the love of power is what is evil. We could do an entire episode regarding Nelson Rockefeller, who had a very extensive social and cultural and political career. But let's just take a look at one of the things that he was involved in. The United Nations was founded October 24th, 1945 in San Francisco, California. Nelson Rockefeller. Rockefeller was a member of the U.S. delegation at the United Nations Conference on International Organization at San Francisco in 1945. This gathering marked the UN's founding. Rockefeller was also instrumental in persuading the UN to establish its headquarters in New York City. We learned in previous episodes that the Office of War Information and the Voice of America, which are under the authority of the Department of State, were using propaganda to create solidarity and a collective mindset for all of the citizens of the United States to be in unity for the current global conflict of World War II. It was to win the hearts and the minds of the citizens. However, the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs has taken this to a completely new level. Now, this solidarity and this collective mindset isn't just for the citizens of the United States, it is also for all the citizens of the entire Western Hemisphere. And it's no longer for a current global conflict or to win the hearts and minds of the citizens. Now, under the auspices of fighting communism, it is to win the social and cultural hearts of the citizens, to prepare their opinions for any approaching conflicts. On the surface, this sounds like a good idea. However, we must remember, Satan appears as an angel of light. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Under social engineering, Nelson Rockefeller began to place images in our minds in order to plant in our minds certain ideas. It was done to create a specific type of culture, not only within the United States, but also within Latin America, to create a solidarity and collective thinking for the entire Western Hemisphere, which is known as Pan-Americanism. He began what he called cultural diplomacy. He used music, television, and movies to begin this cultural diplomacy. The first thing he did was he hired William Paley, the CEO of CBS. And in turn, William Paley recruited many actors and actresses as goodwill ambassadors. Included were Bing Crosby,
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas,
Rita Hayworth,
One night she started to shim and shake, that brought on the Frisco Quakes.
and Edward G. Robinson.
Yeah, how many of those guys in office owe everything to me? I made them. Yeah, I made them just like a tailor makes a suit of clothes. I take a nobody, see? Teach him what to say, get his name in the papers.
In exchange, he brought to the United States famous Latino actors and musicians, such as Eva Garza.
Quizá otros brazos te den la ternura que yo no te di.
And Carmen Miranda, aka the Brazilian bombshell, aka the Chiquita Banana Girl.
O meu ganza faz tica-tica-bum-tic, pra eu cantar o tica-tica-bum-tic.
But most notably of all was the Goodwill ambassador, Walt Disney. Walt Disney was one of many studio owners who agreed to be Goodwill ambassadors. Many agreed to begin playing Latin jazz and Latino music. They agreed to place at the forefront of their television shows Latino actors or actresses.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you your favorite bedtime story, Caperucita Roja. Now, once upon a time, había una muchachita muy bonita que le decían Caperucita Roja, porque siempre tenía un red bonnet.
They agreed to place scenes of Latin America in their movies and bring Latino actors, actresses, and musicians into the forefront of their movies. This social engineering of getting the American people to love Latin America and to get Latin America to love the United States simply through imagery and music and what they see on television and movies may sound like quite a conspiracy, but it is not. Here are a few scenes from a documentary made over a decade later regarding what the Walt Disney Company did in Latin America.
I was asked by the government to go to South America and kind of a cultural thing, you know, before the, those Nazi days.
Yes.
And I went down with the staff to see if I couldn't make some films about the ABC countries down there. You know, there's Argentina, Brazil, and Chile.
Yes.
And they first wanted me to go on a handshaking goodwill tour, and I said, I don't go for it. I'm not a good handshaker and everything. And then they came back and said, well, you go down and make some films about these countries. I said, well, that's my business. I can do that.
Take a pencil in your hand.
That's right.
Indeed.
So I took a staff, and we set up headquarters in Rio. We also went and set up a studio in the Argentine. We went over to Chile, and some of my artists, we divided our party. Some of them went up through Peru. And when we came back, I made these 4 short subjects. We brought back the Tico Tico tune was being played down there, and I brought that back and put it in. Brought back Brazil, and both of them became standard tunes here. And out of it, we developed this little Brazilian parrot, Jose Carioca, who played with Donald Duck. Anyways, these 4 films were more or less put together, and they went out in the theater. And of course, it was one of those things that they thought Disney needed a subsidy, but you know, fortunately, that little thing went out, and it did a heck of a business, and the United States government didn't have to put up 1 nickel.
Ah, wonderful.
It was actually a goodwill tour for the government.
And it was later, about 2 years later, that the Three Caballeros then became the new
That was
project,
a follow-up, yeah.
combining live action.
Yeah.
with
I almost need the subsidy on that one.
The natural comedian of Brazil is O Papagayo, the parrot, the inspiration of many funny stories. The animators adopted him, dressed him up, named him Joe Carioca.
A piñata is full of surprises, presents. It is the very spirit of Christmas. Christmas! Oh, no, Donald. For goodness sake, not jingle bells. In Mexico, they sing Las Posadas.
According to Gerald Haynes, who documented the Americanization of Brazil, states that the OCIAA went beyond the entertainment industry, and they recruited corporations in advertising with a financial incentive. They made an agreement with the IRS to give corporations tax deductions for any advertising they did in Brazil. And the Brazilian government agreed to give their corporations tax breaks for advertising in the United States. Now, these companies, these advertising agencies, they weren't in on some conspiracy. All they knew was they would receive tax deductions for all of their advertising in Latin America. So they took full advantage. So the people in the United States saw this.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way, and when they're flecked with brown and have a golden hue, bananas taste the best and are the best for you.
And the people in Brazil saw this.
Outdoor displays are equally important in Coca-Cola's advertising in Rio, the capital of Brazil. These imposing Coca-Cola posters are a tribute to its most popular drink. This is the popular Copacabana Palace Hotel, near which is another Coca-Cola painted bulletin. The Brazilian city of Sao Paulo also has many large bulletins and posters.
And this is where the angel of light, the wolf in sheep's clothing, comes to bear. We learned in the previous episode that the Venona Project was a Central Intelligence Agency operation which revealed that many employees in the Office of War Information and the Voice of America were actually KGB agents of the USSR. The same held true in Rockefeller's OCIAA. Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs, Wikipedia page. Soviet penetration. American citizens were employees of the OCIAA and engaged in espionage on behalf of the Soviet Union. It lists a few more notable characters here that were arrested for espionage, and one was Willard Park. He was a professor at the University of Oklahoma, and he established an on-campus group called the New Masses. In the 1940s and 1950s, people listening to the music on their radios and watching television shows believed that the entertainment industry simply reflected what was happening in our society. It was simply a reflection of reality. However, this was not true. They were not reflecting reality. Nelson Rockefeller, one of the founders of the United Nations, was using the entertainment industry to engineer a society, to create solidarity and a collective thinking amongst all citizens in the Western Hemisphere. But why? Why did Nelson Rockefeller, one of the founders of the UN, want to create such a solidarity for the entire Western Hemisphere? Can we imply his motive? Let's take a peek at a short documentary the OCIAA made. Hold up. I thought this was all about a cultural exchange. Why are you in collaboration with the Office of War Information?
Brazil has declared war and joined the United Nations.
Wait a minute. I thought this was all about relationship between us and Brazil. Brazil joined who?
Declared war and joined the United Nations.
Oh, okay, well, thanks for the clarification. Do you really care about the people of Brazil, or is this just about getting people on your side?
Just what does this mean to the people of the United States and to our fighting allies? We have gained a powerful new friend in Brazil.
Do you really want friendship, or is this just a power move?
How can Brazil and her people help us to win the war?
Oh, okay, well, thanks for the clarification.
The Tiradentes Palace has, since January 1942, come to be known as the birthplace of Hemisphere unity.
Oh, whew. Just in time. What a coincidence. Is all this cultural exchange propaganda really just to get a new ally for the United States, or is this some sort of a step toward globalization on the down low?
For it was here that the 21 American republics drew up the momentous Rio Charter, a far-reaching agreement of mutual faith, collaboration, and protection.
Oh, well, okay. Well, thanks for the clarification.
These fine ships and fighting men throw the balance of naval power that much further in favor of the United Nations.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Y'all said this was a big propaganda campaign to get the Brazilian people to love the people of the U.S. and the people of the U.S. to love the people of Brazil. So now the Brazilian Navy is in our favor then, right?
In favor of the United Nations.
Oh, snap. Well, I guess now we know what's really going on. I certainly hope that this Practical Prophecy episode works as a warning to my fellow Christians not to pay attention to what's happening on television, Netflix, the movies, what you're hearing on the radio, what you're hearing from pundits, or the political class. I hope this helps you to understand and see that they're leading us to a place, and it's a place of slavery, not freedom. This is not of God. We all know that what's happening in our society and our culture is demonic. But I want you to understand that if you watch the news, if you watch movies, if you listen to the radio, if you watch any sort of television shows or pay attention to certain memes on Facebook and social media, it's contrived. There are people behind the curtain that are purposefully attempting to plant in your mind things to make you accept a certain ideology, a certain opinion for you to have, to go along with global governance and to support the Antichrist. Please help spread this warning of what is happening in our media by clicking the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. That will help promote this video on YouTube. Be blessed. Until next time.